A very good evening and warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. Welcome to another week, and a week that has much excitement rippling through the South African wine world, and indeed the world of wine beyond our borders, because this Sunday the Cape Fine and Rare Wine Auction comes around. It was the Nederburg auction in days gone by. It's now the Fine and Rare Wine Auction, and that's what we're celebrating on the show today. Our first two guests will be the director, whose job, as far as I can work out, is just to taste all of the wines repeatedly, and then the auctioneer, who's been flown in by private jet from London to oversee the auction again with his trademark flair and expertise, all the way from Christie's, and adding not just a big name in himself, but also his auction house to this weekend's auction. It's a great auction. There's some terrific lots and a real celebration of both the past and the present of South African wine. I will be chatting to both Niel Groenewald and Charlie Foley in just a moment. We also, then a little later on in the show, Johnny Kalitz will be with us to talk through some new releases from Glen Carlou. We've got a couple of lovely reds and a belter of a Chardonnay, the second half of the show. In what is a big week later on this week, it is World Biodiversity Day. Yes, of course you knew that. It's been in your calendar for months. And so we'll be joining up with the WWF, that's the wildlife lot, not the old wrestling lot, to talk about some particularly well-made wine that pays great deference to the environment and looking after the terroir from which the wine comes. And that show will be live from Ruben's Restaurant down in Franschhoek, because after an afternoon at Buchenhartskloof for a special project we are working on and some more filming on Friday, we'll be doing something extremely special on Saturday. Now, last week, you'll remember, we had a very special edition of the show coming to you live from Boschendal, where we launched a brand new Stellenbosch Cabernet Sauvignon to the Boschendal global audience. Well, we're doing something not dissimilar in that we will be both opening and closing the auction with a special broadcast. So before Charlie gets started, we'll be coming to you live from the Rupert Museum on Saturday morning from about 8:30. Far too early for me, but I shall be doing it just for Neil from 8:30 until the auction starts and goes live at 10 o'clock. And then when it finishes around about 2:30 or so, a second show just to look back at the auction and see what's gone well, what's gone particularly well, and what's gone extremely well, because everything will go well in the hands of Charlie Foley. So that's coming up on Saturday. Right now, though, it's time to look ahead to that auction. And joining us from Stellenbosch, and I'm not sure if he's in the country yet or if he's still in London, but a very, very warm welcome to both Neil and Charlie. Welcome to the show, guys, and welcome to a very big week for you both.
Hi, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. How are you?
Extremely well. Lovely to have the both of you on. And let's start off with Charlie. Find out where you are. Have you arrived in the country yet, or are we still waiting with excitement?
No, yeah, sure. I'm here. I arrived on Sunday to lashings of rain. The first time I've arrived in the Cape when it's raining. But now it's beautiful. I'm in Stellenbosch, getting ready for Saturday. And it wasn't a private jet, sadly, Dan. I ended up with an old Die Hard film and some brown bread, but there we are. That's commercial lines for you during COVID.
You are here, and that is the important factor, because you've become a bit of a cult figure in South Africa in a very short space of time to your appearances at the auction. And I want to talk about that auction and why it means so much to you in just a moment. But before we do that, let's go back a step. How do you find yourself in the rather particular space of being a wine auctioneer, Charlie?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I wouldn't say cult. I don't know. I think that's just my suit's a cult, and I just happen to be in them. Maybe that's the thing. How did it all start? I suppose, sort of dinners with my mum and dad. Really, when we were little, my dad would cook something on a Sunday and bring something up from to drink, and that's where it all started. And when I sort of went to university, I ended up doing classics, which is like Greek and Roman history, and sort of specialised in the ancient wine trade in the end. And after that, I decided to head off to Argentina and try and make wine. So went there and then came here. So I was working in Constantia for a while and fell in love with the country. So I was happy to be invited back to take the auction in 2019, and even more ecstatic to be invited back to take it now, especially after the terrible year that South Africa has had wine-wise.
Indeed it has. We need good news stories, and the auction is one of them. Neil, talk us through the process of bringing this British auctioneering rock star into the fold of your auction.
Well, I think after the success of 2019, it was really just necessary to have him abroad and come abroad again to come and join us. Obviously, this year's auction, and with the changes that we've had to make quite a few changes in adapting, but also exciting changes and taking the auction in the direction that I really wanted to be, where there's a wider footprint. So it would be this year, it will be a small function at the Rupert Museum. If you compare 350 people to maybe 60 max this year, and then also in a hybrid format where you can across the world to be bidding while Charlie's and live streaming while Charlie's actually doing his thing at the Rupert Museum.
It's an important part of the way auctions are run now. We're seeing so many more of them online, and in the space of not very long, a lot of change. Nederburg auction becomes Cape Fine and Rare, and now you've got people all over the world. You've got a very well-known auctioneer coming in again from the UK. What's the build-up been like? What's the excitement been like? What is your sense of the anticipation ahead of Sunday?
Well, I'm very excited. I think we've got a team that's been working really hard and been very dedicated on bringing you the same type of level of auction that people have gotten used to. Obviously, changing it from the Nederburg auction to Cape Fine and Red, being much more industry inclusive, and that's still the direction that we're going. Also, I'm excited about having you on board. So where we've got a little sneak peek of what's happening at the auction, but then on Sunday to really close the loop and having you live there, so that people can see and hear actually what has been happening at the auction. I think that the online registrations were supposed to close today, but I've actually asked for it to be extended with one more day. So if there's anybody still after tonight's show that feels that they've got some money that they want to spend on really good, fine and rare wine that's been chosen by some of the country's experts, the wine judges, then definitely feel free to register. It's going to be an exciting event, and it's going to be an amazing opportunity. There's one specific lot that I'm looking forward to seeing the results of, and that's the 1821 Winter Constance, so which will be auctioned up. So it's used to be Napoleon Bonaparte's favorite wine, and I think there's maybe one of 12 still in the world. So I attended the recorking of this wine a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, it's not your standard console bottle that the wines came in those days. So the cork actually had to be cut by for the handmade glass that it came into. So yeah, really exciting to see what happens there. And different to the past where it was a 2-day event, this year it will only be on 1 day. But we'll still have the charity auction, but the charity portion will then actually be weaved in against the lots that will be sold. So some changes, something new, something old, but yeah, something borrowed and blue, but definitely there's still the theme that goes through, and that's really about showcasing South Africa's fine and rare and showing what the country can really do, and hope to get some good prices from these wines for the producers.
Which I think we will, and that belief is backed up not just by myself, but by one of our viewers in London, a gentleman by the name of Greg Sherwood, who's watching in. Some good prices at the latest auction, I hear. Well done. That leads, Charlie, to a question on the story of South African wine and in the UK. If there's been a silver lining to our desperate times the last 18 months, it's that South African wine has been firmly under the spotlight. We're certainly seeing people buying more South African wine generally. Is there more of an impression, though, in the UK market that South African wine is becoming collectible as opposed to simply drinkable?
Absolutely. Do you know, I think the UK often sees South Africa as, just south of Gibraltar a little bit. It's almost European rather than African in a sense. And so, our hearts bled last year when there was all of these lockdowns and no selling of alcohol. And, kudos to all of the merchants, including Greg and Waitrose, of course, who've done sterling jobs with lots of South African offers, including the Molyneux thing that Waitrose have just done last year, which is absolutely astounding. And I think, yes, South Africa is now moving into that collectability stage, which is because a lot of these wineries and the sort of big notable ones like David and Nadia and even Sardi and Cannon Cop, they're all on sort of allocation lists, and getting your hands on these rare vintages is quite tricky unless you're on the allocation lists for these merchants. And so to find even rarer back vintages at this auction is really quite astounding. And hopefully there's lots of interest internationally on these rare old things, and especially the large format ones, which are really quite fun. And as Niel says, the 1821, hey, we're hoping for fireworks, aren't we? I sold 6 bottles of Cheval Blanc 1921 last week in Geneva for 91,000 Swiss francs. So if that's a centenary, then what's a bicentenary going to fetch?
It's by some distance, I think it is the big card on what is a very impressive list all round. And what adds to the value of it is, I think, and Niel can correct me, but I think in 1821 the assistant winemaker for that vintage was actually Jan Boyland Coetzee. Lovely to have that particular one on a long list. Before we try some of the wine, Charlie, I know you're very, very professional, and as a result, taste lots of South African wine as part of your research in the build-up to this auction. You've had a look through the list. What are a couple of the wines, other than that 1821, that have caught your attention that you're really excited to put under the hammer on Sunday?
Hey, do you know, I'm in love with loads of things. 2 years ago, Chenin Blanc was really caught my attention, and I think the two different styles of Chenin that you get in South Africa, the more reductive style and the slightly more oxidative style with barrel ferments are really intriguing. So, there's a wealth of Chenin Blanc on offer. The reds are exciting, and I did a thing with Tim Atkin last week, which is going on the Christie's Wine Instagram tomorrow, hopefully, and we were looking at lots of different Cabernet Sauvignon, which I really think is absolutely banging the nail on the head now in the Cape. So we were looking at wonderful producers such as Le Riche. I think they're sort of a master blender, really. And then moving to other red wines, the Rats, a lovely name, and the Cabernet Franc there is absolutely delicious. I think really found the sort of Loire style of Cabernet Franc in South Africa. So I think that's really good. I'm really excited about them. And hey, I'm Mr. Bubbles, drown me in the stuff. So De La Lude and the Rosé would be my tipple of choice, I'd say, for right this moment.
Some great selections. Let's try a couple of them, because we've got a few wines that Niel's very kindly sent up for me from the auction. And the first of these is a wine from David and Nadia. It is the Scully Cop, and we'll get Charlie to pronounce that for us in just a moment. The 2015 Chenin Blanc. And you probably, Niel, don't have to go back too long to remember a time when putting up a Chenin Blanc at this sort of auction might have raised an eyebrow or two, because Chenin Blanc just really wasn't in that sort of space. But it's a very different story today.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Chenin Blanc has come an amazing route to actually showcase what South Africa can do, and then also show the diversity of the variety. You knowing me well by now knows how close Chenin is to my heart, and also producing top-end Chenins, like, for instance, this Schalikop. Vineyards were planted in 1985 on a farm called Paardenbosch. So it's just amazing. Dry land, what intensity of fruit and layers of fruit you can actually expect from a wine like this. And having producers like David and Nadia, being able to cherish this and keep it separate and showcase it to the world is really amazing, and being made in as natural way as possible. I think the only additive might be sulfur, which is quite a unique way of not a unique way. It's quite a cost-effective way, but it means that all the wines and the profits actually go back into the ground, because you need to really pay some great numbers to keep these low-yielding bush vines in the ground. So yeah, it's definitely the generation of Chenin Blanc, and for me, it's not the only calling card for South Africa, but it's a great conversation starter. So once you've proven that you can make a decent Chenin Blanc and people's eyes on Chenin, then you can start showing them the beautiful Pinotages or Cabernets or Merlots that also comes from the country.
Charlie, you've already mentioned your affection for Chenin Blanc, and not hard to understand why. But you've got an added advantage here at Warrant for Sunday, in that you're not just selling some Chenin Blanc, but you're selling some slightly older Chenin Blanc from the Swartland, made by a guy called Sardi, and not Eben, but David, together with Nadia, just as successful, just as acclaimed. and that gives you, I suppose, plenty to talk about once this starts selling.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just been up in the Swartland, actually. I went there when I straight off the flight. I went straight to the Swartland. I've not been there before, so amazing to see the sort of sights and the terroir there. It's quite intriguing that how different it is from this side of the mountains down here in Paarl. So I was really excited to go up there. And 2 years, of course, Eben Sadi was the top lot with the Columella. So we're looking for really, fantastic fireworks on the Old Vine Project wine, of which Eben Sadi is a part this time. I think their wines are really exciting. And, I'd relate it to something that I heard in Spain, actually, in January. I went to see René Barbier Jr., who owns Clos Mogador. And he's got a side project now called Venus with his wife, which he makes slightly crunchier, fruit-forward wines that are, sort of more approachable, younger. And he's doing a lot of interesting things with cement, low intervention, whole bunch, these sort of things. And he's aiming this at sort of a younger crowd, a millennial crowd in wine bars in London, Tokyo, and Cape Town, or wherever, really, Malibu, could be anywhere. And those sort of wines are really approachable, really fresh, really drinkable. But at the same time, he's still doing the Clos Mogador, which is a sort of oaky, glossy style wine. And I think, South Africa already has this in abundance. It has these two different styles, which are quite intriguing. So there's something for every palate. And hopefully we'll see those two groups of people at the auction on Saturday.
Sadly, not something for every wallet, because Mr. Foley is rather good at his job. The prices are likely to rise very quickly once everything starts. But that's great for the wine industry. Greg Sherwood, top Old Vine Chenin, super collectible, and there's no pre-mox problems like white Burgundy. So that's Greg chipping in, probably on his third lunch of the week, and it's only Monday. And then Reginald Peckler up at Cheetah Plains in the Sabi Sands. This auction sounds extremely exciting. It could be given a certain classification. What do you think, Neil? Well, it is, Neil. It's regarded as one of the big 5 wine auctions of the world, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think of Ossenburn and you think of the Napa auction, this is definitely one of the big auctions of the world, and one of the first. I mean, if you think of way back when it started in 1975, was the first auction that was held in Nederburg. I mean, so there was a lot of people and a lot of learnings that came from the auction, and over the years, how we've been able to evolve it, and how other people have been able to take certain learnings from the auction and start doing their own auctions. I know for a fact that the Napa auction started after this specific auction that was attended by some important people in the American wine industry.
In terms of we've already spoken about the UK industry. How much, kind of percentage-wise, how big a component of the people taking part in the auction are likely to be from outside of South Africa?
Well, currently looking at the numbers, and we're running through the last of the RSVPs, the online registrations has predominantly been outside of South Africa. So you're looking at about a 60-40 split of serious buyers, 60% international, and then 60% online, 40% in the room, and of the 60%, at least half of them being outside the country borders.
South African wine to the world, and very excitingly so. We've had a look at that Chenin. Let's have a quick look at the other wine that we are trying today. And this is from Aikendal. It's got a nice collection of stickers, and that is their Charisma. It's an interesting wine, this one, Mr. Foley, because Shiraz is not unusual, but to then throw in quite that much Petit Verdot plus some Sangiovese, it does make for not just an acclaimed wine, as the awards it's won show, but also something rather unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Syrah, that's a fantastic grape variety in the Cape. Tim Atkin gave the Porcelainburger 100 points just last year. That's 100% Syrah, of course, from Swartland. But to have this wonderful blend with the Sangiovese, I think is really intriguing. And, especially as sort of climate change has begun to affect the Cape as well, it's intriguing to change up the grape varietals and see what can be done differently. So to have this wonderful blend, I love Petit Verdot, actually. It was the one grape variety that when I lived in Argentina, I sort of fell in love with. I remember sitting next to the mountains on an asado, and it was a winery called Desiero, 100% Petit Verdot, and you get this wonderful pencil-led sort of quality to it, like a graphite thing, which is really intense and delicious. So this wine, absolutely delicious, and hopefully it does well on Saturday.
Yeah, not too well, because it's one of the ones I'd rather bid on. But we'll have a quiet conversation about that later, Charlie. Your thoughts on this one, Neil, as a blend?
Yeah, I must say I've had this wine recently, and I've got the bottle next to me. It's where the industry is really going where you're moving away from this heavily wooded, overpowered, high alcohol wines to a lot more refined and wines that still got great ageability. I think the Petit Verdot and the Sangiovese definitely brings those elements of light, fresh, higher acidities than obviously with the Shiraz backbone. So it's a really interesting wine, and where 1 + 1 is not 2, but 1 + 1 actually maybe equals 5. So, or equals a great show next Saturday.
Let's look beyond these ones one last time. I know you've spoken, Charlie, about wine that you're excited, looking forward to auction. But if there's one bottle from that whole list that you could quietly make disappear and pop into your luggage for the trip home before the auction, what would that bottle be?
Hey, do you know, I'm going to give a shout out to a slightly sort of less loved grape variety in the Cape, and that's Chardonnay. I really love Chardonnay, not just because it's the home grape variety of Burgundy, which I find myself selling more than anything else, but I really love Chardonnay, and Uva Mira is a really delicious estate for Chardonnay. It has that sort of wonderfully sort of intense peachy apricot aromas about it, and that rounded body, which is really delicious. I could bathe in Chardonnay, and so give me this in magnums and I'll be a happy man.
Well, drinking and bathing in Chardonnay clearly works, because Charlie turns 68 next month, and he's still looking 25. So that's your pick. We've already mentioned the 200-year-old wine, Neil. So from the rest of the list, what's something for you that you'd absolutely love to get your hands on?
Sure. I must say I'm really interested in the Chenin, and then also the Cabernet Collective. There's from the Cabernet Collective. There's quite a series of series cabs that I think will be beautiful as an addition. So yeah, being slightly larger and maybe having a slightly shorter distance to home, I might be able to grab 6 to 12 bottles, and get them to be sneaked away in my jacket pockets. So yeah, definitely go for one of those collections.
All right, last one for each of you before I let you go, because I know you have a busy week ahead of you in the build up to Saturday. Neil, I know registrations are still open until the end of tomorrow. Come Saturday, if people aren't actually there, where do they go to watch the auction, to participate, to see the entertainment play out?
Yeah, it will all be then streamed from www.capefinewineauction.auction. So that would be the website. I think maybe just to pop the website details onto the screen at some point. That's where they'll be able to see it. And the registration at the same place.
And you'll also be able to see a very special edition of Dan Really Likes Wine, both before and after the auction, which is in the hands of the great Charlie Foley. What is the rest of this week like for you, Charlie? Is it intense yoga? Is it lots of readings of old copies of Plata? How do you prepare for a big day out on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just sitting next to the pool, drinking Chenin and doing yoga. That's my entire week. No, it's hectic. I've got, planning lots of fun things this week in terms of wine, building up some buyers for Saturday. We've also got a sale in Hong Kong and a sale in London in June. So, yeah, my usual life, really, speaking to buyers across the world and encouraging to bid on delicious wines, including on Saturday.
Which many of you will be doing. We're going to see some more about Charlie and Neil this week. They'll both be joining me, in Charlie's case, briefly, before he jumps on stage on Saturday, and then afterwards as well, when we celebrate a new record, which Charlie assures me is very likely. So we'll watch that closely.
We hope so. And I hope your team have a sort of a heavy lighting, Dan, because the suit I have on has elements of gold lame, which is a bit alarming. Yeah.
We'd expect nothing less from the best dressed man in wine, although I think Neil's got something planned as well. So it'll be a pair of Liberace's taking to the show on Saturday morning. Guys, thank you so much.
Neil.
I might wear my Dreiser Bone jacket that I got in 2000 in Australia. So that's the closest I'll get to it.
Perfect. Look forward.
So it is a sartorial attraction as well as a wine one coming on Saturday. Charlie, enjoy your week in the Cape. Thank you so much for coming back to South Africa, for supporting the auction and lending both your name and your expertise to it. Niel, I know it's a busy week for you and your team. Best of luck for it. And we look forward to seeing you both in person at the Rupert Museum for the 2021 auction on Saturday. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. See you then. Bye-bye.
There we go. Niel Groenewald and Charlie Foley joining us from the Cape ahead of the auction on Saturday. Reginald Peckler, Syrah is finding its feet at home, and we will be talking serious business in centuries to come. We're so lucky to have different pockets to cultivate such. Porcelainberg has already lifted the flag so high. Joy in my heart and joy in your glass if you happen to have a bottle of that wonderful wine from Cully out at Porcelainberg. Right, so the auction, as I say, will be broadcasting live on Saturday from 8:30 on Saturday morning. All right, good luck, Ronaldo, getting out of bed, our producer, and also after the show. But we've still got plenty more wine to taste, and there are some new releases from an estate that I have very fond memories of in passing, because it's right next door to where I got married. I got married at Baxburg. Glen Carlou is right beside it, and so I've driven past many times and visited a few. Do need to get back there sooner rather than later, but if I can't be there in person, I can be there virtually with Johnny, who joins us now from Glen Carlou. Johnny, warm welcome. Lovely to have you on Dan Really Likes Wine.
Hi, good evening, and thanks for having me.
We've got some great wine to taste and to look forward to. I'm very excited about that. But before we do that, it's always fascinating to find out from the people who are behind the wine what their journey has been and what's taken them to where they find themselves today. And that story always starts for me with how you first fell into wine. What was it about wine that caught your attention and put you on the road to where you find yourself today?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So I grew up in a small town in the Little Karoo called Carletsdorp. Very small, and if you don't know where that is, it's about 50 kilometers west of Oudtshoorn. And while growing up, I was surrounded actually by a couple of Cape wine masters at that point. And I think if you look back per capita, probably the highest density of Cape wine masters, it's been Carl and Boots Nel from the Krans and Boerplaas, and also the late Tony Mossop. And so I grew up on a family farm, also producing some wine grapes in between the table grapes and fruit orchards of apricots and plums and all that. So it was, I think, growing up and basically experiencing wine in so many different ways, then making and also being part of small families, getting together, enjoying wine. And although that's more sweet wine, say call it Small Valley, I got a lot of exposure to wine from a small age. And then also a cousin of mine and a sister being successful winemakers, I think that also rubbed off at the end.
And you're now at Glen Carlou. You're only the fourth winemaker in the history of Glen Carlou, but you had somebody who you followed on from who had some rather big shoes to fill. When you take over from someone like who's been there for that long, he's created his own slice of history on the estate. Is it more exciting that you're moving on, taking over from somebody like that, or is it a bit daunting, a bit nerve-wracking to be filling those shoes?
Hey, look, this has been my 21st vintage. Looking back, I started making wine in 2003 after studying in Stellenbosch. I've done some vintages overseas and celebrated 21 vintages this year. So I worked at the neighboring farm for quite a while before coming to Glen Carlou, and filling shoes, Walter Finlayson, and then after him, David Arco, who's been David's assistant for quite some time. He took over, and so yes, I'm only the fourth one, but the foundations was laid, and I think on the farm we know exactly where we're going and where we want to be, And the groundwork has been done, and it's for me now to take it further and to improve on the quality that's been produced thus far.
And it's a reputation of quality that has been well established, and it's a reputation we will find, I'm sure, in the glasses. Before we jump into the Chardonnay, a little bit about Glen Carlou itself. What is it about the terroir, about your stretch of winemaking paradise that lends itself to the quality of wine you're able to produce?
Yes, Glen Carlou has been known in a household name, I think, for Chardonnay, for Bordeaux blend. Our Grand Classique is very popular, and then the Cabernet Sauvignon. I think that's wines that people will remember way back, so I think this part of Simonsburg Paarl, we basically situated on the northern foothills of the Simonsburg, facing towards Paarl. It's in fact a younger developed wine growing region, and I think over the past couple of years there's a lot of wineries that made name for themselves. Taking Babylon Storer next to us, we have Fred and List, Rupert Rothschild, all neighbors on the Simonsburg Paarl stretch. We have on Euro Vineyards, Niel Groenewald, Noble Hill. So we basically nowadays call this the Golden Mile. It's exciting. There's a couple of young winemakers taking this whole stretch to the new level.
Well, let's see how that level has progressed. First of our wines is from Chardonnay. It is the Quartz Stone Chardonnay, single vineyard wine, which suggests in the name that we might just be able to guess what the terroir is like.
Yes, exactly. So this vineyard is actually quite special. It's been planted by Walter himself, Walter being a two-time Dynasty Club winemaker of the year way back. And this vineyard is now going on 32 years almost, one of the first being planted on the property. And there's a reach of quartz stone actually in the vineyard where this is planted, and hence the name, the Quartz Stone Chardonnay. Now, the quartz minerality of the stone within the vineyard reflects a lot of sunlight onto the fruit, and terroir is actually the big and most influential, and the soil obviously is the most influential on the properties of a wine. So nowhere else can the soil be replaced or the same, and I think that is what distincts a wine from one wine from a different wine. It can't be duplicated or changed, and the soil has a big part to play in that. And this Quartz Stone vineyard, as I said, obviously a lot of over the time, we dropped a lot of the volume. The volume has gone lower because of the age of the vines. But careful attention to specifics in the vineyard, trying to improve the quality and overall concentration on the Chardonnay has been the main focus. And with this wine, a lot of vineyard work has been done over the years to eliminate and to get sections of the specific block to improve on the quality which we have in this vines.
There's a real zing to this wine, a real zip on the palate that comes racing through, and it's a Chardonnay that I think might appeal to one of our previous guests. We know Mr. Foley's love of Chardonnay. And when you make this, you leave a little bit of it unoaked. What does that do to the wine? Why is that important for you in constructing this final wine?
Yes, Dan. So basically, a Chardonnay is quite a neutral variety. So I think the age of the vines play a big role in the concentration buildup of the fruit. But what we do is this is 90% new oak. So a big portion is new oak barrels, and then we use a concrete shaped concrete tank to basically preserve the freshness and that stone fruit you get in the fruit. So this concrete egg tank, shaped tank, is basically in a shape of an egg, but what it promotes is that the lees never settles in this tank. So it's being moved by a vortex movement inside, keeping the lees in suspension, and then it's promoting yeast autolysis, which then also gives you a nice texture on the wine, but preserving the freshness. Now, the oak we use is what the coopers call water bend barrels or water bend staves. Now, these staves is saturated in hot water before they start the toasting process. Now, what this does is they actually started this. The objective of this technique was to prevent breakage of the staves, but later on they realized that toasting these staves actually has a different kinetics to what it gives off on the wine. So with the hot water leaching out the excess tannin, it also prevents the temperature when toasting and having a high humidity, prevents caramelization of your wood sugars on top and never reaching more than 180 degrees. And I think that component is not giving and not over oaking the wine, basically, not giving off too much of the oak, but rather supporting the palate and let the wine shine while it's being aged, matured, and fermented in the oak barrels.
It's a slightly more complicated process than just picking some grapes and throwing them in a tank, as Johnny makes particularly clear. The results here are splendid. That is our first wine for this evening. Reginald Peckler saying, Johnny, I would climb mountains for Glen Carlou Pinot Noir by making it better and better. I promise all my dollars are written Glen Carlou Pinot Noir. So proud of you. Well, I'm afraid, Reggie, we're not drinking any of the Pinot Noir this evening. We do have some great reds, and the first of those is the Classique, which is the Glen Carlou blend, which I have a glass I'm about to try. Introduce us to the blend, what makes it up, and why have you chosen what you have chosen, Johnny?
So the Grand Classique, also a household name, I think, going way back. It's always been Bordeaux, 5-component Bordeaux blend. Of these two wines mentioned before, we're trying to really go into detail into most of these wines nowadays. We going back to the drawing board and rethinking of what we're using and what ends up in the bottle. Now, the Grand Classique is, as I mentioned, the 5-way Bordeaux blend. It's predominantly Cab Sauv with Merlot Cab Franc, which makes about 85% of the blend. And then the Petit Verdot and Malbec being the small portions we use basically just to salt and pepper on the base. Now, this wine spends about 18 months in French oak, about 50% new oak, but I think the style has slightly changed, making this quite a expressive wine in the same sentence, keeping the old world sort of intrinsics, but then just giving it a bit of freshness and newness. And I think this is a absolutely stunning example of Bordeaux blend in South Africa. We get good ripeness on the Simonsberg Pole, and all of these varieties suit the property quite well. We have all of these different vineyards, and all of these components are kept separate until basically the final blend is made up, and only the best will be used in getting into this wine.
How fluid is that blending process, if you'll pardon a terrible pun? Is it right? I know it's percentage, or as the wine is getting produced, are you mixing and matching a lot? Are you getting a sense of, I need a bit more Petit Verdot here or a bit more Cab there? Is that how it works, or are you quite set at the beginning, this is how it's going to work?
Not at all. So it basically comes down to the vintage, and 2018 being a difficult one. We just came out of the drought in 16 and 17, or basically we were in the midst of the drought at the time. But it's what shows at that point in time. We never have a prescribed volume or prescribed cultivar we need to use. As this blend is only, I think, 1% Malbec, so that's basically just a small splash. It's never really got to do with a certain set recipe. I think we need to look and it's not only myself. We pull in a couple of people to be part and to get as many opinions as possible to create this blend. But then it needs to stand out. It needs to showcase what has done the best in that specific vintage. We all hand it over to nature in some sense. So in some cases the Cab will stand out, and in some cases the Merlot might be even better. But it's almost always predominantly Cab, led by Cabernet Sauvignon. And yeah, so every variety will show differently in different vintages, and we need to use that to create the best possible blend we can put in the bottle.
How much do you have to wrestle between personal preference, your teacher's pet of a grape, I suppose, versus how something's done a particular year? You absolutely love Cab, but you've got to make the tough decision that actually, you know what, Merlot's got to take centre stage this time around. Is that something of a challenge at all?
No, definitely. But winemaking has also got a lot to do with you work on history and you work on learning throughout. So that's why being a winemaker, after 5 years, you basically just started to know the vineyards and what to use and what will end up where and when to harvest. And as I said, you basically on nature's end result. So whatever you get, you need to adapt and you need to use those varieties the best you can. Now, I always say when these are harvested and they end up in the barrel, you don't really have a preference. And the best way always that we do is we taste the components blind and to see the potential without a preset mind into what you prefer. And that's what a blind tasting is all about. It's basically getting the best, not having a made-up mind for certain variety or certain style of wine.
The Classique is now sitting at 2018, as you say, as many of the winemakers we have on the show talking about 18 have said, not the easiest of years. And so that makes the success of this wine that much more of a triumph. The aging of this particular wine, and then for me, very, very important question for you, Johnny, what am I eating with this?
Well, if it's a Cab-based blend, and Cab for that matter is it's got a lot. It works well with red meat. Obviously, the tannin with Cab and Cab Franc having a thick skin and lots of tannin with protein. When you eat a red meat steak, for instance, that clears your palate of the proteins. Tannin being negatively charged and the proteins positive. Clears your palate for a new experience every time. So this wine, I think a nice steak, red meat would work wonders.
Simple but delightful. And just on that aging, how long till it hits its peak? How long can I be keeping this?
Well, this, I would say 5 to 7 years. Probably now is a good time to start enjoying it, but I would say in the next 2 to 4 years it will even be better, and probably at its peak in about 5 years from now.
All right, still very drinkable now, of course. Lovely freshness to it and some lovely ripe fruit, but another couple of years certainly won't hurt. All right, so that is the Cabernet lead blend. Let's go Cabernet all on its own. What about Cabernet as a vintage? We know 15 remarkable, 17 in some cases, starting to even surpass some of the 15s. Difficult year. How did that affect the winemaking with particular regard to Cabernet Sauvignon?
Yeah, we need to take the vintages as they come. We can't choose them. So, and being a single vineyard, it's even more difficult. We're not blending away anything. It's the Coldstone Chardonnay and the Gravel Quarry Cabernet Sauvignon is two wines that we have on the property, which we put a lot of detail into to make this wine as perfectly and refined as possible. Now, with this Cabernet Sauvignon, we put a lot of detail into selection, into management of canopy within the vineyard, and also in sorting and processing in the cellar. Now, 18 not the best vintage overall, I think, but with what we had, this was a extremely good wine. I think this wine will open up over time even more. It is not as big and as extracted as 17 and 15 has been. 19 also coming online pretty soon is one of the good vintages I think we can look forward to. But 2018, I can't complain. I think we situated in an area which we don't have a lot of fluctuation. in the build-up to vintages. Obviously, the vintage is being decided by the amount of rainfall, light, and then heat during the growing season. And if I compare 2018 to the previous vintages, maybe obviously slightly different, but we picked quite early. We managed the situation, and I think we did it quite well.
Lisa Harlow watching enviously from the UK. The Gravel Quarry Cab is my favourite Glen Carlou wine. It's stunning. I've missed my lunch on the terrace at Glen Carlou this year. Lisa, you're just going to have to come and spend 6 months here to catch up on all the wine and the lunches that you have missed. And that is the Gravel Quarry. And then we have a question from Fabien Letiec wanting to know which grapes do you have on the property? Do you have all the ones that you put in the bottle? So is this a complete estate wine when it comes to the blend?
Yes. So on the property, we have Chardonnay, we have Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon. We have all the components for the Grand Classique, which is the Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. We do a Shiraz and a lot of Chardonnay. Obviously, we have different portions and vineyards of Chardonnay. But yeah, so we put them all into bottle under different labels. Obviously, we have a beautiful range of colored labels, which is easy, recognizable. These are not all the wines we have, but these are single vineyard samples, the Courtstone and the Gravel Quarry, which comes from the property. And then the blend is obviously also from the Simonsberg Paarl appellation. We also have a range called the Glen Carlou Collection. Now, there's a different focus on these wines. These are small parcels and vineyards, interesting wines. We're getting some attention on those wines, and that's basically sourced vineyards mostly. So if we come across a very good and interesting vineyard, like many people do these days, is we try to bottle that separately and trying to get excitement and newness on the wines. Obviously, all the Glen Carlou wines is always on offer. We source a Sauvignon Blanc under the Glen Carlou range, but that comes from Cape Town, or more specifically Durbanville, which has been certified as a wine of origin or new appellation, named Wine of Origin Cape Town. And yeah, so there's a couple of wines, and please visit our website to see the different options. So we love experimenting with different wines and also get some newness onto the brand. These wines, I think, showing beautifully at the moment. These has just been launched. Most of them will age for quite a while, but also can be bought and enjoyed straight away.
Final word from you, Johnny, on the estate as a whole. Lisa has referenced the lunch and the terrace therein. There's also, if memory serves, rather a nice art gallery amongst your attractions.
Yes, so we have a beautiful tasting venue. It's overlooking the whole Paarl region, I would say, and we get a lot of elevation on where Glen Carlou is situated. It's basically on the highest vantage point of the farm. The art gallery showcase a lot of contemporary art, mainly local artists, and a beautiful restaurant. At this moment, we open Fridays till Mondays. Obviously, with lockdown, not a lot of visitors as we used to. A lot of overseas people used to visit us, but just less times open. But we're still quite fairly busy, and yeah, that's what we have to offer. Please come and visit.
Lots of attractions, headlined though by the wine. And if you aren't able to visit just yet, I would recommend dropping by. You can kind of pay a visit to Glen Carlou through the medium of a rather nice bottle of Johnny Carlitz's wine. Johnny, thank you so much for the time. Look forward to being back down your part of the world and come and have some wine with you in person. But for now, great to at least share a glass with you over an online tasting, and really do appreciate both the wine and your time. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me. Enjoy.
There we go. Head winemaker at Glen Carlou, Johnny Carlitz, doing Carlitz Dorp proud with wine down in the Klapmuts area. It is, as Johnny said, such a fabulous stretch. You've got Anura, where Johnny used to be, leading on to Glen Carlou. You've got Backsburg, Rupert Rothschild down the road, Babylon's Turin. So some terrific spots to go and visit. Fred and Lust at the end of that road. So a lovely day of wine routing, as I'm sure many of you have done. So a big thank you to Johnny and the team at Glen Carlou, and to Pippa Pringle, who's always a great support. And also a big thank you to Niel Groenewald and to Charlie Foley, joining us as they will again on Saturday ahead of the Cape Fine and Rare Wine Auction. And a reminder again that we'll be broadcasting live from the auction from 8:30 on Saturday morning if you really feel like an early glass of wine. So a lot to look forward to later on in the week. And on Thursday, we'll be having some wine. I think Movida will be joining us, possibly Waterford as well, a couple of estates who are involved in the WWF Biodiversity Programme and celebrating International Biodiversity Day over a few glasses of wine at Ruben's Restaurant down in Franschhoek. So a busy week for the show, which you'll be joining us glass in hand and continuing to support South African wine. And to do that, if you haven't already and you're here in South Africa, you can join the Pick and Pay Wine Club. Just send your smart shopper number to 36775 and you will get a whole range of benefits. Amongst them, you will get 3 times the smart shopper points on all wine, 20% of 10 great wines every month, and a whole load of competitions, including this month, the chance to win over 6,000 Rand worth of wine from Warwick. And that is if you buy a bottle of Warwick, any bottle of Warwick, and you are a member of that wine club. So a great opportunity there. And also look out for some great wine dinners. We'll have some more information for you on Thursday when we will be down at Rubens. So we will see you there for a few glasses of wine. Thanks again to our guests. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and watched. Keep drinking, keep supporting South African wine. See you Thursday. Cheers.